Hi, I'm Ken Adams, and welcome to this edition of the Valley View. And joining me today is Alicia Kueny and Mandy Augsberger, and we're going to be talking about foster parenting. And I think it's an important subject, and hopefully you get a lot of information out of it. So welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you.
And Alicia, you work for the Department of Health Services?
Department of Human Services.
Human Services. And you're kind of the person that goes out to recruit foster parents. So I'd really like for you to kind of explain the process and what you're looking for in foster parents.
I am a foster parent recruiter, and that role is interesting because I don't typically do cold calls or go knock on people's doors, but I find myself really trying to engage the community and helping them to understand the significant needs of the children in our community that are in foster care. And when I most recently checked, there were 639 children in foster care in Marion County alone. And so I see my role as important to communicate that we need nurturing and safe and stable caregivers for those children, and enough of them that we can match them with just the right family to meet their specific emotional needs. So I do engage the community through presentations, through coming on a show like this, through any sort of resource fairs, partnering with businesses, partnering with the faith community, and then I receive inquiries from people who maybe have thought about becoming a foster parent before, and it's something they've maybe had in the back of their mind, but then they're ready to start asking more questions and taking more steps. And so I begin by just kind of getting to know who they are and their current family makeup. Sometimes we have single providers, married providers. We do certify gay and lesbian couples as well in the state of Oregon. Sometimes families have their own biological children, have adopted before. So I just kind of get to know the structure of the family, and then answer some general questions for them about what it takes to parent a child who's been abused or neglected. And after kind of those initial conversations, I refer them on to training. And we have a structured training of 8 sessions that cover really specific areas that are unique to parenting children in our care. And we consider children in our custody a special needs population due to the significant trauma they've experienced and their significant emotional needs. So the training then is really the first big investment that families make in becoming a foster family. And once they've completed all the sessions of training, they have an opportunity to turn in their application packet. We run background checks and then assign a certification worker who their whole role is to get to know the entire family and their whole life story. And we do this because we take very seriously our responsibility to ensure that we're only certifying safe and stable families. So we ask very detailed questions about people's childhoods, how they were raised, what they've experienced in their lives that makes them who they are today, and then how they're functioning in all different areas of their life. And we put that together in a home study document. And then at that point, we are ready for them to start taking our children and nurturing them and caring for them and working as a team with our agency to help them reunify with their families.
And I'd imagine there's 8 courses that they have, a study that they have to go through training. So how long are those courses? They're like an hour or 2, or are they longer?
There's 8 sessions in the series.
Okay.
The training is called Foundations, and we break it down into 8 sessions because the subject matter sometimes is pretty heavy and also a lot to process. So the curriculum was designed so that an applicant can take a class, go home and kind of digest it a little bit, and then come back to the next session. And those are from 6 to 9 p.m. in the evenings here in Marion County. They typically take place 2 nights a week. So a family essentially can complete training within 4 weeks.
Or a month or so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so is there any ongoing training after you become a foster parent? I would imagine sometimes there would be situations that come up that weren't necessarily covered in the training, and maybe they need a little bit more support.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the case?
Mm-hmm. And our certifiers are assigned to really support and kind of guide a foster family through the experience and working with our agency. So first and foremost, the certifier is a contact person for a foster parent to connect with any questions or issues that come up. But then additionally, we do require 30 hours of training every 2 years. And so when a foster family initially becomes certified, that foundation series does cover I think 24 hours of those 30 hours of training that are required. But then from that point on, just every 2 years, they need to have taken 30 hours of ongoing training. And we do offer specialized trainings, and we have a partnership between Child Welfare and Portland State University. So we have trainers from Portland State that will come in and do specialized trainings.
Here in Salem, so they
Salem.
don't have to go up to Portland
Yes.
or some other place.
Yes.
And so are there different levels of foster parents? Now, when I looked into it once before, there was like a need for emergency foster parents who would take somebody, sometimes literally in the middle of the night. They'd get a phone call and say, we're going to be bringing somebody by in an hour. And then there's the more long-term. Is that kind of the case here in Salem?
That is true, and you're right that there is a need for emergency foster parents. In fact, there's been that need every night this week.
Oh, okay.
I work shifts of on-call after hours, and each night this week I've called families asking them if they'd be willing to take children that have needed to be removed from their homes in the evening. Sometimes, I think this week it's been pretty consistently between about 10:30 and 10 or 10:30 at night, and even last night. So yes, there is a need for emergency caregivers. And sometimes some people, that's all they can commit to. So they can go through the whole process of becoming a foster parent and say specifically, I would like to be an emergency caregiver. And we call that emergency shelter care. That can range from an overnight to a few days or a few weeks. And so really that type of care is needed, especially in situations where maybe we need some time to try to reach out to family members, because our agency has a high priority to place children with relatives whenever possible.
Okay.
So sometimes we need a little bit of time to be able to go through that certification process with a relative, or to be able to seek out relatives. So sometimes that emergency care is just needed to get through until a child can be connected to a relative.
Okay.
Correct.
Or to a long-term foster parent as well.
Right, and it's hard. I think a typical question that I get is about how long is a length of stay for a foster child in a home. And that's difficult to answer, but I would say in general it's typically a number of months. The Adoption and Safe Families Act guides our work with biological parents when their children are removed from their home. And that legislation gives us a time frame of about 12 months to work with parents to try to remediate the concerns that brought their children into care. And at that 12-month mark, if the courts determine that there haven't been significant progress made on the parent's part in order for the child to be going home soon, then we look at changing the permanency plan to a different plan, adoption, guardianship, maybe an independent living type plan, depending upon the case. But initially, our plan is to return to a parent. So sometimes that can happen sooner than other times, and it really is a case-by-case basis. But I would say that on average, it's a length of stay is a number of months in a foster home, upwards of around a year or so. So that's when you say long-term placement, that's what I would refer to as
Okay.
more of a long-term placement.
Okay. And Mandy Augsberger is actually a specialized foster mom who likes to have teenage boys, which when I heard about it, I was really surprised, because I thought, Boy, that's really taking on a lot of responsibility. And then she told me that at that time she had 5. And right now she's working on a 6th one. So I was really interested in listening to Mandy's experience about being an actual foster parent of teenage boys. So Mandy, how do you do this? With a lot of patience, I would imagine.
Well, some days.
Yeah, some days.
Well, it's a team approach. My husband and I foster together, and we have, since becoming certified, we went and got a bigger home. Obviously, we're going to have that many kids, so we have plenty of space for them, which helps having, not kids stacked on top of each other.
Right.
We have 5 biological children of our own, 4 adults and out of the home. So just our youngest son, who's 17, is still in the home. And then over the last, it's been almost 4 years, we've fostered about 20 children. Length of stay could be literally 8 hours before they get up and run, or 4 years. We've adopted 1 child out of foster care. We have guardianship of 1, and then currently have 2, almost 3 foster sons at home as well. We do work full time, both of us, so we're blessed with a job that allows us to write our own schedule, so we can be available for the kids whenever they might need us, and we can switch things around for appointments. There is a lot of commitment for being there for the kids' needs, so doctor's appointments, court appearances, caseworker meetings. It can be a little time consuming and overwhelming, but you can get it done.
Yeah,
you work through it.
And even like all of a sudden now they're sick, and if they're seriously sick, I would imagine then you would have to stay home to kind of keep an eye on them. And I remember that my wife and I, when my daughter was in school, it was like we would be taking turns, and it was like it became quite a problem.
Right.
It eats up a lot of time sometimes.
We also have 2 really great respite providers. So we had my mother and my daughter both certified. So they had background checks done, and they were run through DHS. And then when I need them, I can call on them to come into the home. If my husband and I need to go out of town for something, they come stay in our home with our kids. So we have a little bit of backup there, which is nice.
What are some of the real challenges, though, you find with teenage boys?
The same challenges with any teenage boy. Attitude, pushing boundaries and limits, and picky eaters, and sneaking out at night. They're just normal kids who need a lot of love and discipline and consistency.
And consistency is probably the big thing.
Yeah.
And that's not always easy to do, because you go through the emotional changes yourself, and then to have to worry about where you are and where they are at the same time can probably be. But you've managed to do that, and you've managed to do this over a period of time. And so what are some of the rewards then of foster teenage boys?
Well, the rewards are huge. The ultimate reward for us was being able to adopt our son and have guardianship of our other son. We never entered into fostering with that idea. And then these kids come into your home, and you really do just fall in love with them. It can be a little emotional. They're awesome kids, and just seeing the kids that, we had 2 brothers that stayed with us for about 14 months, and watching them be reunified with their mother was huge. It was a big deal for us to be able to see them go home to her into a healthy environment, and still be able to have a relationship with them and with their mom, and be able to see them and have that connection with them. That doesn't always happen. Seeing kids get back into school and say, I'm going to go get my diploma, even after they've been on the run for months or had given up on that dream, there are big rewards. Having those kids come into your home and they hadn't been able to bond with somebody before, and 6 months down the road they're calling you mom and dad, and they feel safe. And knowing that we've been able to provide that for them is huge.
Yeah, and one of the other things that always kind of concerned me was when they turn 18, they're now out of foster care. And one of the things I always kind of worry about is what kind of support system. That's scary, going out in the world at 18. and not having some sort of support system. And I don't care how old you are. It's nice to have a family or someone you can fall back on when times are tough, or you just need a timeout from life sometimes. Right. And so you mentioned to me that you, just because they're 18 doesn't mean anything to you. They're still part of the family.
Well, that's just our personal philosophy.
Right.
Once the kids have come into our home, any of them, whether they were there one night or for 4 years, it doesn't matter to us. If they need us, they can call us, and they all know where we live. They know what our phone numbers are, where we work, and we're going to be there for them. That's just like as if they were our own children, biological children. We're always going to be there for them.
Yeah, and I think, as a community, that's something that a lot of times people have forgotten about, because like in, say, village or tribal settings, all the children are yours. Mm-hmm. People, aunts and uncles, and that was a loosely used term in those days, would make sure that they watch the kids. And
that's a message that I think that I like to remind our community that these are some of the most vulnerable children in our community, those that have they've not had a safe home environment. Children are dependent upon their caregivers to survive, and when they haven't been in a safe emotional or physical environment to do so, then that impacts their ability to grow up and become productive citizens in our community. So I really do believe that it is our community's responsibility to help care for these children, and we've had a lot of wonderful families come forward and make that happen by becoming foster parents. And I know that there are many more out there that, when the time is right, they'll be able to do it, or maybe they just have some questions, or maybe they need to talk to someone like Mandy who does it every day. Yeah, and it's so powerful to hear someone's experience firsthand, and to be able to ask the little questions and kind of have that mentorship if someone is interested in becoming a foster parent but just needs a little bit of extra support along the way. We want to try to make that happen.
Yeah, because it's the unknown that's the scariest thing. Mm-hmm. And so, whatever we can do to kind of make it more familiar to folks, I think it makes it easier for them to make that decision. And so what is exactly the need? You mentioned that when you took a survey, there are 639 kids here in Marion County in foster care. So is that normal, or is that going up or down, or what is the situation?
Over time, that number has come down, thank goodness.
Oh, okay.
I think that it was in around 2006 that there was a really significant crisis in our community with the law enforcement's initiative to shut down meth homes or meth houses. And the unintended consequence of that was that there were children in those homes that then entered foster care, and we had so many enter foster care at once and not enough homes for them. And at that time, I think there were over 1,100 children in foster care. I would say on any given day, there are between 600 and 800 children in our county in foster care. But as of about a week ago, the exact number was 639.
And so, do you experience shortages then? That was a crisis situation, but on a normal basis, what's the situation as far as foster parents?
There's an ebb and flow, and it's dependent upon a number of factors. One of those factors is we need for families to be successful so that their children can be returned home to them. And that's not always in our control. We do the best that we can to work with parents to create that possibility for children to come home. And when they do go home, then we have openings in our foster homes. And so that's one factor that it's contingent upon. Another factor is we have some foster providers that have been providing this service to children in our community for a number of years, and they decide that that they're ready for a break. Or even if we have families that are still currently certified, but we say that they're on hold, they need some time for their family, or maybe a child just left their home, and they kind of need some time to grieve or to process those feelings and to kind of find some stability again within their own family unit, and then say, okay, I'm ready to welcome more children into my home. So there's a number of factors that influence the availability of homes when children enter care. And inevitably, every year once school starts, we see an influx of children entering care, and we believe that's related to just kind of the eyes that are on kids in a school setting and the mandated reporters then that are required to turn around and report concerns to our child abuse and neglect hotline. So then with that increase in numbers, we see an increase in children being removed from the home and entering foster care. And this week alone, we've had 3 sibling groups that have entered care and a number of other children, a few teenagers that I've been directly involved in working on trying to find appropriate homes for them. And it's hard. It's really hard when, you know, I mentioned the ebb and flow and all these factors that are in consideration. This time right now is really difficult for us to have enough resources available to take a look at our list of homes with openings and say, okay, we only have 2 homes that even have space available to take 2 children, and we call them, and they have a number of factors in their own lives that would influence whether they could take a child at that time. And they also have the ability to say, you know, I don't think that that's a good fit for our family. So we are really at the mercy of the number of homes with availability in order to do right by these kids. And what they really need is the right home, that the strengths of those providers can match the needs of the children. And
those particular children.
Yes, those particular children.
Yes. And I guess one of the other things that I was kind of curious about is, well, you were talking about kids that were coming from like meth houses. And I had a friend he was on a county that cleaned up those meth houses, and he became disabled. So I would imagine there were probably kids with some severe problems as a result of living in those homes.
And that is a significant factor that contributes to the reason why we would assess that a child is unsafe in an environment like that is, one, due to the health implications, but also due to the number of unsafe people that come in and out of a drug home. And while we're on the topic, I do like to clarify for people whenever I have a chance that although substance abuse by parents is the number 2 leading reason why children enter foster care, our agency doesn't just place children in foster care every time a parent has used illegal drugs. Our organ safety model requires us to do a comprehensive assessment of a family, and there must be a safety threat that's current and presenting danger to that child. And we also take a look at the vulnerability of that child, which is different for a 1-year-old versus a 17-year-old in terms of their dependency on adults to care for them.
What about the economy? I mean, does that have an impact on how many kids end up in foster care? Or maybe how many foster parents feel secure enough to be having foster kids?
I hadn't thought about the latter, but I do believe that financial stress is a significant stress factor that impacts families. And what we know is that when there are multiple stress factors present in a family, there's an increase in the likelihood that abuse or neglect will occur. So while we would not remove children from the home due to poverty or homelessness in particular, we do find that when a family in significant poverty or a family without the basic need of shelter over their heads, those families are more likely to end up abusing or neglecting their children just due to the significant stress the parents experience.
I mean, do some parents actually give up their kids because they don't feel like they can financially handle it? Because maybe they lost a
It's-
job, or you know, they are homeless now, whereas they previously had a job and, you know, a home and everything.
It's pretty rare.
It
It's
is,
pretty rare
okay.
that parents would give up their children or
Mhm.
relinquish their rights to their children. However, we do see some families that come to us asking for help, and so occasionally we have voluntary cases where they say, I have too much on my plate impacting my ability to parent this child, and I'm unable to parent this child at this time without the help of the state. So we do have a minimal number of voluntary cases like that, but I think more so what comes to mind for me in circumstances like that is more so the prevention side of things. In the business of child welfare and the interest of looking out for the needs and well-being of children and families, we know that there is a need for prevention, which is, you know, putting supports and services and, you know, wrapping our arms around families to help them in their time of need so that their children don't end up coming into foster care. So there's a need for prevention. There's also a need, unfortunately, for intervention. No matter how much prevention we do, there are still times that families or individual parents aren't ready to make changes and are still putting their children at risk. And so there is still a need, unfortunately, for foster care because we have to intervene to ensure the safety of children. So we have prevention, intervention, and then our caseworkers specifically work in restoration of families, trying to reunite families and trying to help heal some of the issues that put the children at risk in the first place to create a safe home environment.
Well, Mandy, we just have like a minute or so left, and I was wondering if you could kind of address people as to your experience and what would you tell people that are considering being foster parents?
I guess I would just say that if you have any inclination that this is something you might want to do, to investigate it further. Take the classes. It's not a commitment. There's some great things you're going to learn in there just for your own family, some great skills, but get familiar with the classes, and you're going to hear a lot about the need in those classes, and then just say yes to one. You know,
Try it
start
out.
small, try it out. You can always decide this wasn't a good fit for our family and we can't continue doing this, but at least check it out. It's it'll change your life, and it'll be for the better.
Well, that says it, I think, very well. And I'd just like to encourage folks to get in touch, and we'll have the information for how people can do that in the credits. And so I want to thank you, Alicia and Mandy, for coming down and sharing this kind of, I think, important information for the community at large. So thank you very much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay. And this has been The Valley View, and I hope you come back next week and watch our next episode. Thank you.